This week on the homestead, the plans definitely changed. Between a surprise snow day, kids getting sick, and the weather flipping right back to spring, it turned into one of those weeks where you just roll with whatever the day brings. So in this video, I'm moving between the kitchen and the garden, getting some easy meals going from the freezer, baking fresh sourdough, topping off the garden beds with compost, and just doing my best to keep things moving with the kids right alongside me. Some days on the homestead don't go how you planned, but there's still a lot of beauty in the middle of all of it. Look at our poor sunflower. It's like, I made it through everything just to die. My beautiful garden was under about a foot of snow or so towards the end. And as you can see, the kids were thoroughly enjoying it. And we had a great snow day because it only lasted about 1 day total. He's a baby.
I'm actually surprised it's got this much snow on the ground.
I know. There's a lot. We are not used to this amount of snow where we are, and this was a very big treat, but we really weren't prepared for it because, like I've said in previous videos, we really haven't even had a frost recently. Now, it did get down pretty cold, obviously, for it to snow, but when the sun came out, it immediately started melting and then frozen to ice, as a lot of you will understand. And so it was just this 1 day of this nice, fluffy, fresh powder that the kids and I got to enjoy. And with that, we canceled school that day and we just had fun. So things got pushed off for a different day. And today I just kind of want to talk about how you do always in life, generally, and especially when you are homeschooling, homesteading, and homemaking, have to learn to roll with the punches. As a nurse, that was something that I had learned to do rather easily on the floor when patients would take a turn or you would have patient change in assignments and such, but it's a whole different thing at home. And this has taken me some adjustment, and I feel like I am still working on it because I'm very task oriented. And when I get interrupted, it is hard to pivot. So for this week, because of the snow, I had to postpone ordering the compost and getting the garden going. And so I knew that I was going to be spending an extra long day out in the garden to get these tasks done. And so I started with this crock pot chicken that I had in the freezer already marinating. And it made it a very simple day. I didn't have to go in and out of the kitchen quite as much on this day as I do the next day. But as you can see, many hands make light work, and with my husband and my children helping me do this, it really didn't take but maybe a full day, but broken up into two, as you'll see. And we weren't really filling any of the beds. We were just using this 20% worm casting and compost that we got from a local worm casting center to top all of the beds, especially these in-ground beds here that we have shown in previous videos where we took the gravel off the top and then we kind of tilled it as much as the hard red clay would allow. And then we took the top layer from where the chickens were and put it down into the beds. And as you can see, there is a lot of weeds. So there's a lot of great things growing in there, especially nettle that I had to get out. And my poor little sunflower that did not make it through the snow. There were actually 3 or 4 of those. So being able to add this mineral rich compost on top is going to hopefully help us be successful with this garden expansion this year. So this was a marinade from Costco. It was the avocado lime. If I don't know if you saw it written on the bag. And side note, that permanent marker that I used actually ended up dyeing my white countertops as it was defrosting. So Note to self, always put on a plate and not directly onto these white countertops. And I just made some buttered rice and air fried some of the broccoli that I have with the garlic. That's always my go-to, I think, is just broccoli and garlic air fried with some avocado oil and some salt and maybe other seasonings like herbs. And it is very, very simple and very quick. So that is something that I always try to have in my back pocket for days or weeks like this where I have to pivot and be doing something else outside of the kitchen a little bit more than I'm used to. For all you other homemakers, do you guys sit here and count each piece of broccoli or whatever vegetable for each plate like I have to? Because I know what is going to be eaten and what is not, and what is going to be a fight versus who is going to gobble it down, or is that just me? Let me know in the comments if you were just like me and watching me painstakingly count how much I put onto each plate because I have one child who absolutely hates broccoli and will only eat one piece. I have another one who will absolutely gobble it down and ask for seconds. So I have to be pragmatic when I am filling out plates with everything. And that is not something I was prepared for as a mom and homemaker. It's just, it mind boggles me sometimes, but it's funny because my husband doesn't seem to realize that. So it's my little task. So on the next day after the compost was delivered, I knew that I was going to be outside quite a bit. That's why I'm actually wearing my really old soccer shorts. If you see something shiny, that's what it is. Yes, they still fit me from high school, which is mind blowing. But anyways, so I am making this pulled pork, and I will leave the recipe in the description box below. I am substituting some things in it for what I have on hand, which is something that I am very grateful that I am learning to do. So this recipe is a citrus smoky pulled pork, and instead of the orange juice that it calls for or the limes, I am going to be using a homemade pepper jelly that I have in abundance. One comment in a previous video back in the pantry challenge had mentioned that the pepper jelly would go good with pork, and my word, they were absolutely correct. So for this, I am using 3 tablespoons of salt, 2 teaspoons of cumin, 1 teaspoon of smoked paprika, 2 teaspoons of chipotle powder, 1 teaspoon of dried oregano, a half teaspoon of black pepper, and 1 tablespoon of brown sugar. And so, since I don't actually buy brown sugar, I am making it here in this little bowl or the measuring cup, and I'm going to mix it around before I go ahead and rub it onto the pork by using the sugar and molasses and all that kind of stuff. And that just seems to really work well for me. I don't have to worry about it hardening with brown sugar. And so this crock pot allows me to saute first. And so with it, I did put a tablespoon of olive oil. You saw me, I put in about a half an onion diced. And then I'm going to be putting a heaping 1/3 cup of tomato paste into it. This is pepper jelly that I made. And I'm going to be using this instead of the orange juice that this calls for. Just kind of see what it does. I assume it would go really good with pork. So let's try this. So along with the tomato paste, I'm going to be doing about 6 cloves of minced garlic, 1.5 tablespoons of Worcestershire sauce, 2 tablespoons of vinegar. I used a white distilled vinegar. I'm assuming apple cider vinegar would work just fine as well. Now, the recipe does call for about 1/3 to 1 cup of orange juice, and then the juice of 1 to 2 limes. And I'm using a 1/2 pint of the pepper jelly. I will say that this did end up very sweet and overly spicy because I do use spicy peppers in my pepper jelly. I just use whatever I have coming in from the garden in abundance when I make it. So next time, if I do this again with this pepper jelly as a substitute, I will probably not put in that chipotle powder just to make it a little bit more palatable for my children. I am using about 3 pounds of a boneless pork shoulder. In this recipe, it calls for 3 to 4 pounds, and that's what I did the seasoning rub on. It was just in several different pieces. And this just made an absolutely beautiful color marinade for it. And again, it tasted absolutely phenomenal. Highly recommend it. I will put this down in the description box below. The recipe does say to cook it for 10 to 12 hours. After about 8 hours, I was able to shred a lot of the pork and we enjoyed it for dinner that night. I will be showing you what I made with it shortly, but I wanted to peruse my seedlings over here and I did notice they were starting to turn a little bit yellow, so I did end up doing a very light liquid fertilizer on them and they have definitely perked up since then. But while I was perusing these, I saw something that I really was not expecting, and maybe you guys can help me understand how this happened. But I have never had it happen before in my life in the last, I don't know, 6+ years that I have been doing this, which may not sound that long, but let me know what you guys think about it in the comments. Look, I noticed that there's something eating this, and I find this little pesky bugger. Oh, it's fighting me. Look at that. I'm glad I got the tweezers. You ornery.
Squeeze it.
Okay. That's nasty.
It's a baby one.
How did that happen on an indoor? That is gross. As with any working kitchen, functionality is a must, and these cabinets are just not functioning for me. When you try to get something out of it, you always hit these cabinets or you just can't reach into it because they're blocking it. So you have to get on the counter, which is not safe in my age. So, with that in mind, I asked my dear husband to take off the doors, and voila, I am super ecstatic about it. If you follow me on Instagram, you may have already seen that. And I am contemplating whether or not we need to paint on the inside of it or the shelving. We definitely are not going to be replacing it with open shelves. We just do not have the budget for that. So, let me know in the comments what you think we should be doing. I kind of like it how it is, but I'm definitely open to ideas on it. So part of being able to pivot is realizing when I actually have to start stocking things up again when things are running low and take stock of the pantry, especially after that pantry challenge, seeing what needs to be used up and what changes I'm going to be making. For example, I am not planning on buying any more hard or soft wheat berries generically. I want to stick with spelt, kamut, einkorn, just things that I know where they are coming from. I'm trying to pivot into that aspect. So here I am making the same day sourdough ciabatta to be the sandwich for this pulled pork that I have going. And since it's same day, it should be pretty simple for me to do while I'm running in and out doing the stretch and folds and such. And so today I did try the pre-measuring of the wheat berries. I just need to figure out how I'm going to be doing it with the switching of the bowls and all of that kind of thing. But it did work out pretty well. I feel like I wasted a lot less or didn't have to really put any of the excess ground flour into the fridge. So this recipe is a mix of all-purpose and freshly milled. It was 320 grams of the all-purpose and only 200 grams of freshly milled flour, 100 grams of active sourdough starter, 430 grams of cool water, 13 grams of salt, and only a half teaspoon of active dry or instant yeast. I am using active dry yeast. I don't have any instant yeast. Therefore, I am making sure that I am adding it into the water and letting it activate prior to doing all the other steps. And with this recipe, because you are using fresh ground flour, you do want to make sure that you are allowing it time to absorb the liquid before doing anything. But it is a very, very sticky dough no matter what you do. So just make sure that you're not adding excess flour to it. So I need to do these and then start working on some of those. So again, many hands make light work. And as you can see, I have majority of my children around while we are topping off all these garden beds. And I do have to take off the hay from the top before we do it. So that was one of the tasks I was giving the littler children, was to go through and take as much of the hay off as possible before we topped it. So I had ordered 3 yards of this compost worm casting mix, and I really thought that it would be enough for my entire garden to just top everything off. And I don't know what I was thinking. I probably could have used 5 or 6, as you will see later on here, but I had to pick and choose which beds I thought needed it the most instead of being able to do it to all of them. So I probably only did about half of the actual garden with 3 yards of this, and it's not cheap. We only have one vehicle as a family, and so I did have to pay for delivery, unfortunately, and I didn't want to inconvenience my friends. So lesson learned, always order more. Can we focus on the rhizome for comfrey? This is why when you try to take it out of the bed, they keep growing. So if you can get the whole rhizome, I'm gonna probably plant this somewhere else because we like our comfrey, but I don't need it absolutely taking over my bed again. I am going to be trellising my tomatoes this year, so I got some extra candle panels, and I'm going to be moving some things around, which is good to do in a garden no matter what because of the nutrient depletion different plants do. So, like I mentioned, this is a very, very sticky dough. So I really, really floured the countertop, and I'm flouring my hands and the top of it. And it did rise really well. And I think that I really pushed it out and was a little too rough with it. I don't think that I pushed out any necessarily air bubbles, which is what you don't want to do in ciabatta, but I do think that I manipulated it just a tad too much, and I'll show you why a little later that I'm saying that. But overall, this was a very lovely recipe. It was absolutely delicious and really was super simple to do. Even with my gardening tasks this day, I was able to complete it easy peasy. So this is about at the 8-hour mark, like I had mentioned. Probably should have gone longer because it didn't all shred very easily, but it did work well for our dinner tonight. And these ciabatta rolls were absolutely delicious, but they did not rise. I let them sit out for hours and hours, and I even put in a little steam going on with them, and they just did not want to rise. But I was able to cut them and use them, and it was kind of like doing like a low carb bread roll here. It was absolutely delicious, like I've said several times. But I would highly recommend doing these recipes. Again, they will be in the description box below. I really am just in awe of all of these flowers on my fruit trees and my berries. Even after all of that snow, they are just blooming, and I am super, super excited for this growing season. I don't know how you are in your neck of the woods, but the fall spring is back in full swing for us here. And so this is a little glimpse of how this week had unfolded around our home. It definitely didn't go the way I expected, but that's just part of homestead life, learning to pivot, keep on moving, and make the most of whatever the day brings. Between the kitchen, the garden, and the kids alongside me, it all still came together in its own way. If you enjoy these real life homestead days, I'd love to have you here. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the next video, and I'll see you again soon, friends. Bye.